Gemelli Polyclinic, May 13, 1981. On the operating table lies Karol Wojtyła, dying. He has lost nearly 3/4 of his blood, his heart has already stopped once and been restarted with a defibrillator, and he has just received the last rites. The surgeons cut away his blood-soaked white cassock to open his abdomen. And in that instant, in a flash of consciousness before the anesthesia, Pope John Paul II grabs a doctor's arm and gives an order no one expects. Don't take it off. He wasn't talking about the IV line. He wasn't talking about a machine. On that torn-open chest hung a tiny piece of brown wool, and the Pope, with his life slipping through his hands, refused to let it go. Why would a dying man spend his last breath on a piece of cloth? To understand it, we have to look at the exact date, May 13th. It wasn't just any date. It was the exact anniversary of the first apparition of Our Lady at Fatima in 1917. And John Paul II, who had studied those messages since he was young, understood it instantly. This wasn't just a political attack. It was a spiritual battle. Aka was an expert marksman, trained never to miss. He fired 4 shots at point-blank range, and yet the bullet that pierced the Pope's abdomen followed a strangely anomalous path, missing the abdominal aorta by a mere fraction of an inch. Had it been severed, death would have been instant. John Paul II would later say, "One hand fired, and another, a mother's hand, guided the bullet." But while Mary's invisible hand deflected the bullet, on the Pope's chest was the physical, visible sign of that protection, the brown scapular of Mount Carmel. Karol Wojtyła didn't wear that scapular out of habit. He had carried it on his chest since he was 10 years old, received at the monastery of the Discalced Carmelites in Wadowice. Throughout his youth, under the terror of the Nazi occupation, then the communist regime, that piece of wool never left him. When he worked as a laborer in the brutal quarries of the Solvay plant, risking his life and deportation every single day, the scapular was there, on his chest. And this isn't just a pious story. There is a photograph documenting it at Gemelli in 1981, right after the assassination attempt. Stripped of everything, left alone in a hospital gown, still wearing at his neck the brown scapular he refused to let anyone remove. For that Pope, this small sign wasn't a childhood keepsake. It was the only true armor he had. But what is the connection between Fatima and the scapular? Many know Fatima only for the rosary and the secrets about the future of the world. But the final apparition holds a detail almost everyone overlooks. On October 13, 1917, during the famous Miracle of the Sun, witnessed by tens of thousands of people, the 3 shepherd children experienced a series of visions. And in the last one, before Our Lady vanished into the sky, she appeared in the robes of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, holding the brown scapular in her hand. Years later, Sister Lucia was asked why the Virgin had appeared this way in that final moment. Her answer was crystal clear. The scapular and the rosary are inseparable, and the scapular is the sign of consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. For John Paul II, who consecrated his entire pontificate to her with the motto Totus Tuus, that scapular was the physical signature of that consecration. How could a modern pope, a philosopher, believe so firmly in a devotion born in the Middle Ages? The answer lies in an ancient promise from July 16, 1251. Carmelite tradition tells that on that night the Virgin appeared to Saint Simon Stock, prior of the order, handing him the scapular with these words, "Whosoever dies wearing this shall not suffer eternal fire." For a theologian like Wojtyła, that promise had nothing magical about it. He knew well it wasn't a shortcut for someone living in sin who thinks they can be saved by a piece of wool. It means something else. Whoever faithfully wears this sign receives, through Mary's intercession, the grace of final repentance before death. It is not an amulet. It is a covenant of mutual faithfulness. There is also a deeper story tied to the invisible spiritual battle. Exorcists know well the power of this sign. The famous exorcist Father Gabriele Amorth used to recount how, During the hardest exorcisms, the reaction to Mount Carmel was violent. When the scapular was placed on the tormented person, the evil spirit would scream in rage as if crushed under its weight. To hell, that piece of wool is not inert cloth. John Paul II knew this. His pontificate was a continuous battle against the dark powers of his century, and the scapular was his daily shield, worn every day beneath his white cassock. And what about the bullet that was meant to kill him? Its story may be the most extraordinary of all. A year later, on May 13, 1982, John Paul II returned to Fatima to thank Our Lady for saving his life. And there, he made a gesture that would go down in history. He offered the sanctuary the 9mm bullet that doctors had extracted from his abdomen. That bullet was set into the golden crown of the statue of the Virgin. And something happened that the sanctuary itself documents. The diameter of the bullet matched exactly the empty space left in the crown since 1942, where the 8 arches of the diadem meet. As if, for 40 years, that spot had been waiting for it. The instrument of death had become a jewel in the crown of the Queen of Heaven. The scapular, however, John Paul II kept wearing until the end. Today, his scapular is venerated as a relic in the Carmelite monastery of Wadawis, the town where Carol had received it as a child. And in 2001, for the 750th anniversary of the gift of the scapular, the Pope wrote a solemn letter to the Carmelite order in which he publicly confessed what he had carried for a lifetime, that he too had long worn the scapular of Mount Carmel over his heart, for love of the Heavenly Mother whose protection, he wrote, he experienced continually. It wasn't the protection of an ordinary man. It was that of a man who had survived 4 gunshots. The message of Fatima and the devotion of the scapular are not relics of the past to be viewed with nostalgia. They are spiritual weapons for the times we live in. Today, perhaps more than in 1981, confusion, fear, and the loss of faith seem to be crushing millions of people. And the Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Ephesians, commands us to put on the full armor of God so that you can stand firm in the day of evil. The scapular is part of that uniform. Not a piece of jewelry to show off, but a battle dress. When you wear it beneath your clothes, you are declaring which side you have chosen to stand on in the invisible battle being fought on this earth. You are telling the enemy, this life is consecrated. It is protected. It belongs to God. When John Paul II defied his doctors in that operating room, it wasn't superstition. He did it because he knew one simple thing: the armor is never taken off, especially in the middle of the hardest battle. And so the question now turns to you. Which side have you chosen to stand on? If you too want to carry forward the legacy of John Paul II and entrust yourself to the protection of the Mother, join us in the comments and leave this prayer. I entrust my life to your protection, and I do not fear the enemy because I belong to Christ. God bless us all.